The morning began with a pale orange glow stretching across the sky, like someone gently pulling a curtain of light across the world. Ethan Turner sat on the old wooden bench outside his apartment building, feeling the familiar heaviness in his chest. It was the same heaviness he had felt for months. He had lost his job, his confidence, and almost his belief in himself. He kept playing the same thought in his mind over and over again, that life had closed its doors on him, but on this particular morning, something felt different. The air was quiet, the streets were still, and the world seemed to be whispering that something was about to change. Ethan didn't know why he felt it, but he did. It was the same feeling he used to get as a child before something exciting happened, like opening a birthday gift or hearing surprising news. He rubbed his hands together, trying to warm them in the cool morning air. He looked tired, not from lack of sleep, but from the weight of his own thoughts. He felt stuck, frozen between who he used to be and who he hoped to become. He had spent so much time blaming everything around him that he had forgotten something important. He had forgotten himself. As he sat there, lost in his thoughts, an old man appeared at the end of the sidewalk. He was walking slowly, carrying a small cup of coffee in one hand and a folded newspaper in the other. His steps were steady and peaceful, as if every movement had its own story. Ethan watched him with mild curiosity. There was something calming about the man, something almost comforting. The old man reached the bench and paused. He looked at Ethan with warm, wise eyes and gave a gentle smile before speaking, "Mind if I sit?" Ethan shook his head silently. The old man lowered himself onto the bench with the kind of patience only age can teach. After a moment of silence, he turned slightly toward Ethan. "You look like a man with something heavy on his mind." Ethan let out a slow breath. "Maybe. Or maybe I'm just tired." The man chuckled softly. Tired is usually just another word for discouraged. Ethan didn't answer. The stranger's words felt too close to the truth. The man took a sip of his coffee and looked at the sky. "You know, young man, people think life is all about what happens to them. But they forget something important. They forget that how they choose to see those things matters just as much." Ethan raised an eyebrow. "What do you mean?" The man leaned back. "Attitude," he said simply. "It's the paintbrush that colors everything you experience." Ethan looked away, not sure if he believed that. After all, attitude hadn't saved him from losing his job. It hadn't protected him from disappointment or fear. It hadn't fixed anything. The man seemed to sense his doubt. "You think I'm oversimplifying things," he said. "But let me tell you a story." Ethan wasn't sure why he agreed to listen. Maybe he had nothing else to do. Maybe he needed to hear something new. Maybe the man's calm voice made him feel safe enough to stay, and so the stranger told his story. He said that many years earlier, he had been a young carpenter trying to build a life for himself. He worked long days and late nights, putting everything he had into his craft. But just when he felt like things were improving, a terrible windstorm destroyed the workshop he had built with his own hands. All the wood he had collected, all the tools he had saved for, all the furniture he had been working on, ruined in a single night. Ethan listened quietly. He understood the pain of watching your efforts fall apart. "So what did you do?" Ethan asked. The man smiled. "I rebuilt." "But how? Weren't you discouraged?" "Of course I was," the man replied. "I felt broken, angry, lost. But I learned something during those days of rebuilding. I learned that my attitude was the only thing the storm couldn't take from me." He paused for a moment, letting the words sink in. It didn't matter how hard the wind blew. It didn't matter how destroyed everything looked. What mattered was what I chose to believe about myself. If I believed I was beaten, then I was. If I believed I was strong enough to start again, then I was. Ethan thought about this. It was such a simple idea, yet it felt strangely powerful. But what if things don't get better? He asked quietly. The man gave a soft laugh. Things always get better when people get better toward themselves. Ethan didn't know what to say. For the first time in a long time, he felt a small spark inside him, like an ember trying to grow into a flame. The old man folded his newspaper and placed it on his lap. I see something in you, young man. You're not defeated. You're just waiting for permission to rise again. But you don't need anyone's permission except your own. Ethan swallowed hard. I don't know where to start. The man leaned forward. Start here. Start now. Start by choosing a better thought than the one that keeps hurting you. Start by believing that you deserve more than the limits you put on yourself. Ethan felt his throat tighten. No one had spoken to him like that in a long time, maybe ever. The man stood slowly and smiled. You'll figure it out. Just remember, attitude is everything. Change your attitude, and you'll change the direction of your life. He gave a gentle nod and began walking down the street, leaving Ethan sitting there with a storm of emotion swirling inside him. Gratitude. Hope. Fear. Wonder. But most importantly, possibility. As the day continued, Ethan found himself thinking about the stranger's words. He didn't suddenly feel like his life was perfect. He didn't suddenly forget his problems. But something inside him shifted. It was like the world had opened a small window, and for the first time in a long time, fresh air was coming through. The next morning, Ethan woke with a feeling he hadn't experienced in months. It wasn't excitement or confidence. It was simply the feeling of a beginning. He stood in front of his bathroom mirror and looked at his reflection with new eyes. He didn't see a failure. He didn't see someone broken. He saw someone who could try again. He didn't know exactly what to do, but he knew he needed a fresh experience. He took a walk to the nearby park, letting his thoughts breathe with the rhythm of his steps. The sunlight filtered through the trees, and children ran across the grass laughing. Elderly couples sat on benches feeding birds. The world suddenly felt more alive, more welcoming. As Ethan walked, he noticed a small community center with a sign that said volunteers needed. He felt a strange pull toward it. He hesitated at the door, wondering if he had anything useful to offer. But he remembered the old man's words and took a deep breath. Inside, the center buzzed with activity. A woman at the desk looked up and smiled warmly. Ethan introduced himself and explained that he wanted to help in any way he could. The woman's smile widened, and she handed him a list of tasks. He chose one that involved helping children with reading practice. The first day was awkward. Ethan felt nervous, unsure, out of place. But as time passed, the children's laughter softened his tension. Their excitement was contagious. They didn't care about his past or his struggles. They simply cared that he was there with them. Over the next weeks, something remarkable began to happen inside Ethan. Each morning he woke with a deeper sense of purpose. Each afternoon he walked home with a feeling of contribution. Slowly, the heaviness he once carried began to fade. Not because life had magically become easy, but because his attitude toward it had changed. He started seeing challenges as opportunities. He started seeing setbacks as lessons. He started seeing himself as capable again. One day, while walking home from the community center, he passed by a job fair poster outside a local business. His old self would have walked past without a second glance. But the new Ethan stopped. He studied the poster. He felt something rise inside him, the belief that maybe, just maybe, he deserved another chance. With steady hands and a determined heart, he attended the job fair. He talked to employers, shared his experiences, and allowed himself to speak confidently, even when his voice trembled slightly. And although he didn't know it at the time, his attitude, the quiet strength he had been building, was shining through every word he said. A week later, he received a call offering him a position at a small but growing company. It wasn't his dream job, but it was a fresh start, and that was enough. Ethan accepted the offer with gratitude blooming in his chest. His first day at the new job felt like stepping into a new chapter of his life. He walked into the office with calm determination. His co-workers welcomed him warmly, and he felt a sense of belonging he hadn't felt in a long time. As weeks turned into months, Ethan continued to grow. His confidence returned piece by piece. His skills sharpened. His perspective deepened. And every now and then, he thought about the old man, grateful for the moment that changed everything. One quiet evening, long after Ethan had settled into his new life, he decided to take a walk down the same street where he had first met the stranger. He sat on the same bench and watched the sun dip below the horizon. The world had changed around him, and yet it felt wonderfully familiar. He thought about the man's words, "Attitude is the paintbrush that colors your experience." Back then, he hadn't fully understood. But now he did. Attitude didn't magically erase difficulties. It didn't make life perfect or predictable. What it did was simple yet extraordinary. It gave him strength, direction, hope. As the sky deepened into a calming shade of blue, Ethan whispered softly into the air, "Thank you." He didn't know if the old man would ever return to this street. He didn't know if he would ever get the chance to tell him how much that conversation meant. But he knew that his life would forever be different because of it. Years later, Ethan found himself sharing the same wisdom with others who felt lost, discouraged, or tired. He became the kind of person who noticed when someone had heaviness in their eyes. And whenever he met someone who needed hope, he offered it in the same gentle way it had once been offered to him. He began telling his own story. Not the story of loss and failure, but the story of rebirth. The story of a man who thought life had closed its doors, only to discover he had been holding the key the entire time. And every time he told it, he ended with the words that had started his transformation: "Attitude is everything." It became his guiding truth, his personal compass, and the message he carried everywhere. In the end, Ethan realized something powerful. Life was not a straight path. It was a winding road with unexpected turns, difficult climbs, and breathtaking views. And while he couldn't control every twist or storm, he could always choose how to walk through them, with courage, with patience, with hope, and most importantly, with the attitude that he would rise, no matter what. I share stories like this every day. Subscribe so you don't miss the next one.